There are realms of power that cannot be accessed through noise. The universe does not respond to chaos. It listens to vibration, to intention, to the pure sound of faith that flows from a heart aligned with divine purpose. When you whisper, you strip away pretense. You remove the mask. You speak not from your mouth, but from your spirit. That is why the most powerful spells, prayers, and affirmations are whispered, because whispers are born from the depths of the soul. When a mother prays in silence for her child, her words carry a strength that no crowd could measure. When a weary soul, trembling in darkness, utters a quiet plea, that whisper pierces through the noise of the world and reaches the throne of grace. The power of a whisper lies in its purity. It is uncluttered by pride, untouched by performance, and unseen by the eyes of man. It belongs only to God and the heart that dares to believe. Many chase after loudness, believing that volume is victory. But the spirit world does not respond to how loud you are. It responds to how aligned you are. A whisper filled with unwavering belief can accomplish what 1,000 empty words cannot. When faith becomes sound, even softly spoken, it carries authority. That authority does not come from human might, but from divine connection. Think of how creation began. God did not shout the world into existence, He spoke. His word moved through the void like a quiet command, and galaxies obeyed. Power does not always roar. Sometimes it breathes, it hums, it vibrates in the silence of a whisper. Every miracle begins as a silent word spoken in faith. There are times when you must step away from the noise of the crowd and go into your secret place. The world teaches us to be loud, to be visible, to be heard. But heaven teaches us to be still, to be present, to be real. In that sacred quiet, where only your heartbeat and your faith remain, the whisper becomes a bridge between you and God. It is there that power is born, not in the storm, but in the silence before it. A whisper is powerful because it requires closeness. You cannot whisper to someone far away. You must draw near. You must come close enough for breath to touch breath, for heart to meet heart. That is what God desires, that we draw near, not with shouting, but with intimacy. The closer you come, the quieter you become. And the quieter you become, the more clearly you hear the divine response. Sometimes God hides in the whisper to see who will listen. We expect Him in the thunder, but He comes in stillness. We look for signs in the noise, but His voice often hides in the hush of the soul. Those who learn to listen, who can stand still long enough to hear the whisper, are the ones who move mountains without lifting a finger. There is a secret law of the spirit. Noise attracts attention, but silence attracts power. When you stop striving to be heard and begin to believe in the unseen, you enter a realm where whispers create worlds. Every quiet prayer, every word spoken softly in faith becomes a seed in the soil of eternity. The louder you are, the more you depend on human strength. The quieter you become, the more you depend on divine strength. The whisper is also a test of trust. When you whisper, you release control. You say, God, I no longer need to prove my faith by sound. I only need you to hear the truth of my heart. And He always does. He hears what the world cannot. He listens to the trembling breath between your words. He understands the meaning behind your silence. Even nature teaches us this truth. The most profound movements happen quietly, the seed breaking beneath the earth, the tide shifting under the moon, the heartbeat within the womb. Greatness is born in silence. The whisper carries the DNA of creation itself. It is the rhythm of heaven moving through human lips. When Jesus healed, He often spoke softly. He didn't shout to the blind. He didn't scream at the leper. His words were simple, yet filled with authority. Be clean, rise. Your faith has made you whole. The tone didn't matter. The power was in the source. His whisper carried eternity within it. That is what happens when your words come from divine connection rather than human emotion. They become vessels of transformation. There are moments when your spirit is too broken to speak loudly. You can't pray long prayers. You can't find the words. You simply whisper, help me. And that whisper carries more weight in heaven than 1,000 eloquent sermons. Because it is real. Because it is raw. Because it is surrendered. Whispered faith is the highest form of worship. It says, I trust you even when I don't understand. It says, I believe even when I cannot see. It says, you are enough even when I have nothing left. In those quiet moments, you are not performing. You are communing. You are standing before the throne with nothing but your heart, and that is where miracles are born. The world is addicted to noise, opinions, debates, declarations, but heaven moves in stillness. That is why when your spirit becomes quiet, you begin to feel the presence of God more deeply. You begin to sense direction, wisdom, peace. The whisper of faith not only moves mountains, it calms storms. It changes atmospheres without demanding attention. When you whisper the truth of your faith into the universe, the winds carry it. The angels respond to it. Creation bends around it. For every word born of faith is eternal. It does not vanish into air. It travels, it creates, it transforms. You may whisper alone in your room, but heaven hears as if the whole world spoke. Do not underestimate the power of quiet believers. The ones who pray in the night while the world sleeps, who lift their hearts in silence without applause. These are the ones who shift destinies. They may never be seen, but their whispers are woven into miracles. Every revival begins with a whisper. Every divine movement starts with a heart that dared to believe quietly before the noise began. So when you stand at the edge of despair, when your voice trembles and your faith feels small, whisper. When life feels too heavy, when words seem too weak, whisper. For in that small sound lies infinite strength. The whisper of a believer carries the fire of heaven. The language of power is not always spoken aloud. It is often written in silence, breathed in faith, and sealed with surrender. The whisper is sacred because it does not seek recognition. It seeks relationship. It does not aim to impress. It aims to connect. It does not try to control. It trusts. Those who master the art of whispering their faith walk with quiet confidence. They do not boast, yet everything around them begins to shift. Their peace confuses the noisy world because it comes from a realm unseen. Their power flows not from their words, but from their intimacy with the one who listens even to their silence. In every whisper of faith, there is an echo of divine creation. When you whisper, you are not just speaking, you are partnering with heaven. You are shaping reality with unseen authority. And though the world may never hear it, the heavens always do. There are mysteries too deep for loud voices to express, truths too sacred for public sound. The spirit does not need a stage to be powerful. It needs stillness. It needs surrender. The one who learns to whisper learns to wield the same creative power that spoke light into darkness. When you whisper in faith, your words do not vanish. They travel into eternity, weaving unseen threads that shape tomorrow. Every quiet word spoken in alignment with divine truth becomes a force that cannot be undone. The world has taught us that strength is proven by sound, that to be heard is to be important. Yet heaven measures differently. It is not impressed by noise, but by authenticity. A whisper uttered in faith can do what 1,000 sermons cannot accomplish, because whispers come from the hidden place, the inner altar where human weakness meets divine strength. And in that meeting, transformation begins. When you whisper, you are not trying to convince God. You are communing with Him. You are sharing breath with eternity. Every whisper becomes a prayer, every breath a declaration of trust. You do not need to shout for God to hear you. He heard you before you even spoke. But when you whisper, you make space for Him to answer. You make room for His presence to fill the silence that follows. The true language of miracles is spoken softly. When a person stands before God, stripped of all pride, broken yet believing, their quiet plea becomes thunder in the spirit realm. The angels do not need volume to respond. They move at the command of faith. Heaven is not moved by emotion, but by conviction. That is why the whisper is so powerful. It carries no performance, only truth. Every great revival begins not in the crowd, but in the solitude of a heart that whispers yes to God. Before the fire falls, before the sound spreads, there is always someone who bowed low in silence. It is in those hidden moments that history begins to turn. For what is whispered in secret is shouted by heaven in its time. The divine has always worked through the unseen, the quiet, the surrendered. The whisper carries both intimacy and authority. It says, I know who hears me. When you whisper, you declare your closeness to the one who does not require shouting. Whispered prayers are conversations between friends, between Creator and creation, where the distance between heaven and earth disappears. That closeness is where true authority is born. There are things you can only hear in silence. Guidance, comfort, revelation. These are not found in the noise of the world. They are found in the quiet of your spirit, when you stop striving to speak and start learning to listen. God often waits for the noise to fade before He speaks. He whispers because His voice is not meant to compete. It is meant to be received. If you can hear His whisper, it means you are close enough to His heart. Noise may fill space, but silence fills the soul. When you whisper in faith, you align yourself with divine rhythm. The whisper calms storms within and around you. It becomes a declaration that your peace does not depend on circumstances, but on communion. You realize that the power of your words is not in how loud they are, but in who stands behind them. When the storm raged, Jesus spoke 3 quiet words: "Peace, be still." The sea obeyed not because of sound, but because of authority. Every whisper of faith carries that same authority when spoken under divine anointing. It is not the volume of your prayer that matters, it is the certainty of your belief. Whispered faith commands heaven because it comes from complete trust. Those who whisper to God walk differently. They carry peace where others panic. They move mountains without noise. They understand that true power does not announce itself. It simply works. The strongest people are not those who shout the loudest, but those who pray the quietest. Their whispers move through eternity, while others are still trying to make themselves heard. When life feels heavy and the noise of the world drowns your hope, step into the quiet. The whisper is waiting there. That's where you will rediscover the strength that cannot be shaken. The world will always demand attention, but God will always invite intimacy. He is not found in the crowd's volume, but in the heart's surrender. In the stillness, you will begin to notice the language of heaven, the way creation itself whispers its worship. The rustle of the trees, the hum of the wind, the rhythm of your own breathing, all of it speaks the same truth, that power lives in quiet obedience. Even the stars in their silence proclaim glory. There is no noise in their brilliance, yet their light fills the universe. The whisper is divine rhythm in motion. It is the harmony between spirit and creator. To whisper is to yield, to trust, to release control. When you whisper your desires, you are saying, "God, you already know." You do not shout because you no longer doubt his nearness. You no longer fear he won't hear. Whispering means you believe he is close enough to listen. When you whisper forgiveness, the chains of bitterness break. When you whisper gratitude, the weight of sorrow lifts. When you whisper love, it multiplies in ways unseen. Every quiet act of faith reshapes the unseen world around you. The greatest transformations rarely make a sound. Imagine the whisper of a seed buried in the ground, speaking to the sun through the soil. It is unseen, unheard, yet full of purpose. One day it bursts forth as life, so too are your whispered prayers. They move beneath the surface, beyond sight, until the appointed season when they bloom into visible miracles. Whispered faith is patient faith. It knows that what is planted in silence will one day shout with fruitfulness. Even the act of creation was not born from chaos, but from divine stillness. Before there was sound, there was presence. Before there was command, there was breath. That breath, the whisper of God, brought light into being. When you whisper in faith, you echo that original act of creation. You speak with the same quiet authority that formed the universe. There are times when your whisper will carry through generations. A prayer uttered in the dark today can open doors for those not yet born. Your whispered faith is not lost. It becomes legacy. It becomes the soft wind that guides your children, the quiet strength that shapes your lineage. You may not see the result, but heaven records every breath of belief. So keep whispering. When your words feel too small, remember that the whisper is never weak. It is the sound of trust. It is the voice of endurance. It is the language of the soul that knows where its power lies. And while the world shouts to be noticed, heaven bends down to listen to those who whisper. Every time you whisper faith instead of fear, you rewrite your story. Every time you whisper truth into confusion, you break the spell of lies. Every time you whisper light into darkness, you become a channel of divine creation. Whispering is not retreat, it is alignment. It is the moment when the human spirit joins with the eternal. The whisper is not the absence of strength, it is the refinement of it. It is what remains after all shouting has failed. It is the final language of those who walk with God, not in performance but in power. The world may not hear your whisper, but heaven cannot ignore it. There is something eternal about the whisper that rises from a place of faith. It is more than sound, it is vibration, energy, intention, and surrender woven together. When your lips move gently and your heart burns quietly, the unseen begins to respond. You are not speaking to the air. You are speaking to the very fabric of creation. The whisper carries what words cannot explain. It carries the language of the spirit, the breath of belief, the essence of trust. In the quiet moments of struggle, when strength feels far away, the whisper becomes your anchor. It steadies you when you feel like fading. You may not even have the words, but the breath of a whisper is enough. God understands the sighs, the pauses, the trembling breath that says everything without sound. When you whisper from the depth of your being, your prayer becomes pure, unmixed with pride or fear. It becomes a melody that heaven cannot resist. Whispered faith does not depend on the reaction of others. It needs no audience. It thrives in secrecy because it is sacred. The heart that whispers carries more power than the voice that shouts. For the whisper speaks to eternity, while the shout fades into the wind. Every time you whisper in hope, you are declaring to the unseen world that your belief is unbroken. You are saying, I still trust, I still believe, I still know who holds my tomorrow. In that stillness, clarity comes. The whisper quiets the chaos of the mind and tunes your soul to the frequency of heaven. You begin to sense guidance where there was confusion, peace where there was noise, light where there was uncertainty. The whisper does not just release words, it awakens awareness. It allows you to feel the divine breathing through you, reminding you that power has never left your reach. Sometimes all creation seems to pause when a heart whispers in faith. The air thickens with unseen movement, the atmosphere shifts, and something eternal stirs. You may not notice it immediately, but the universe begins to rearrange itself around your quiet words. Whispered faith travels farther than shouted fear. It carries grace, power, and life wherever it goes. The whisper is not weakness, it is mastery. It is the highest expression of spiritual confidence. Only those who know how close God is can dare to whisper. And when they do, the world changes not with thunder or fire, but with the gentle sound of faith breathing life into silence. So in the end, remember this: true power never needs to prove itself. It does not shout, it does not demand attention, it simply is. The whisper of faith, spoken from a heart that believes, carries more authority than all the noise of the world. When you dare to whisper your truth, your prayer, your hope, you are telling creation that your confidence is not in volume, but in the one who listens. The most powerful spells are whispered because real power moves in silence. It is born in surrender, shaped by faith and sealed by trust. Let your words be few but filled with purpose. Let your whisper be your weapon. For the world may hear your silence as weakness, but heaven hears it as command. The universe bows to the sound of a believing heart, and even a whisper, when filled with faith, can shake eternity.